a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempt a mental robbery, executed sloppily. The poppers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome to Middle Path this Thursday night. I'm so pleased to be here with you. Not least of all because clearly the NSA, demon bots, FBI, whatever bullshit, CIA, whatever algorithms or whatever things are trying to stop this stream yet again. It happens more so on Middle Path than even the other shows. So maybe it tells you something about what they really would like to keep from you. And it isn't conspiracies, although that's a good game they play. So I'm glad to be here. I really, truly believe it is all of you that make it possible when you understand that the only reason I'm ever late is because of things getting in the way electronically that should work so simply and then suddenly don't. And you send your love and your intention that it's going to work anyway. That is what does the trick. So thank you so much for those of you who understand and are sending that. Even if you're listening to this on audio and it's days later, you could retroactively send that intention back. You can send it to the next show we have just in case they try to do that again. And it's the eternal they, right? Like, who is it? Well, I mean, it really could be any of those things I listed at the beginning. I mashed them all together because the NSA, CIA, FBI, demon bots, and algorithms are all the same thing. It's all the same energy, and it's an energy that would love to control, constrict, restrict, shut down, disconnect. And as Dakota so aptly said in the Rockfin chat, they don't stand a chance. We are all here and we are connected. Love is the new Wi-Fi. So well said, Dakota. I appreciate you and I appreciate that sentiment. And I appreciate all of you out there. Today we're going to have a fun show. We're going to talk about duality, unity, trinity, eternity, quaternity, and all these things. We talk about these things many times, but not like we're going to talk about them today. So it's always a new show and a new look. And you know, some of these messages were coming to me from the sun and other things I was having some conversation with. And so I just was inspired then to share this show tonight with you all. Of course, Middle Path is always for subscribers, supporters on whatever platform you like to support or subscribe. Got a few down here always below me. There's rogue.locals.com. Of course, there's t.me/rogueways chat is the Telegram chat. It's not for supporters. There's no paid option there, but it is just a fun place to hang out, get updates about anything I'm doing or the show is doing. And also rogueways.org, of course, is my site at the bottom here. So those are just three really good ways to connect. Rogue.locals.com is where you can support. If you become a paid supporter, you get extra content like this show in audio form. You can go to rockfin.com/rogueways if you're not already there, and you can watch it live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain. That is what is really fun because you also get so many other creators' content every single time they produce something that is exclusive. You now have access to it because you only pay once on Rockfin and you get everybody's exclusive stuff. So all the creators there. I got the sweetest message today from someone who joined Rockfin just to see Rogueways, and I appreciate that so much. It's true, if you're watching this on Facebook, I delete some episodes as soon as they're done there just so they don't have a chance to come censor me. I did that to the last episode we did this Tuesday. I do a show 3 times a week. So if you ever don't see a show, something else is going on. So you can always come to Rockfin and see, even if you don't want to become a member and sign up and support, you can still join for free and see the free content that won't be on YouTube a lot of the time because of YouTube's censorship agenda. So I delete day 0 as soon as it's done every Sunday. Corey Hughes, XCube420, Charlie Robinson, myself, sometimes Chris Matthew, and sometimes a guest host. Every Sunday at 3 p.m. Mountain, we do that show, and I delete it as soon as it's done off YouTube. Like I said, I deleted Tuesday's episode this week as well. So lots of times I do that. Usually if I have a guest, it's not often censored because a lot of my guests are not necessarily talking about that kind of stuff. Or at least that's not what the show is about. So we can leave those on YouTube. So there's stuff there. You're just not seeing a lot of it. So be sure you're on Rockfin for that reason, at least, even if you don't want to support. And if you do, you get all kind of stuff like this show, like the hangout after this show. Every Thursday we do hangouts. They're unscripted, unrecorded. I just plop the Zoom link out there for anybody who wants to jump in. We hang out. We have a good time. It's nice to connect with like-minded people who are interested in similar things and have similar attitudes about the world. That's a relief for many of us. So I really look forward to it. I enjoy it. And that is a perk of being a supporter anywhere as well. You can also support on subscribestar.com/rogue-ways. There's ways to get tarot readings every month for certain subscription tiers, or every few months for certain subscription tiers. Or you can just support because you like this content and you are grateful for it and you want to give back what has been given to you so freely. And I appreciate those of you who do that as well. It's very nice. I am going to just share with you all the things that I do as well before we jump into the show. It's funny. No one's chatting on YouTube yet. I don't know if that's a bug. I mean, that happens for a long time. I both wasn't told how many people were viewing the show, and I could not see chats, even though I'm supposed to. And it's very simple software, and I know how to use it. But we'll see what kind of fuckery is going on tonight. The Hangouts are the best. I do always want to share with you guys the site, rogueways.org. There's just so much here. Of course, the Shamanic Soul Services and my writing are the featured buttons on the main page here as soon as you pop in. But all of the tabs have something for you. More about the books. You can get all the different links to Rogue Ways. All the latest episodes are here in audio format. You can read the testimonials of all the people whose lives were transformed by working together with me via the spiritual support that I offer, which is on its own tab here. I do have orgone medicine bags, books that I sell directly from myself to you with a little inscription, events that I lead like One Day of Brightness, which is every equinox and solstice, as well as weekly meditations. That's all here under Shop Orgone and More. You can also go to Rogue Gear, and it takes you over here to TeePublic, where there's tons of fresh gear, fresh designs. No matter what aspects of Rogue Ways and Middle Path you like, it is all here for you to put on a bag, a shirt, a sticker, or anything you like. And I love that about TeePublic. I only get a couple bucks per anything on this site. I just like it. It's fun. Every once in a while I like to throw new designs up here. So keep checking and seeing what is speaking to you. Sometimes I say we need to make a shirt of that, and then I even jot it down, and then I forget. So if you ever want something on the shirt that we said we were going to make into a shirt and we haven't yet, just please tell me. I am forgetful sometimes. So that's the site. The site also now links to the courses on Thinkific as well. Oh, they keep doing this. It's only from my site. I wonder if that's happening to you guys, because that is not helpful. Wow. What a bunch of bullshit. You see how many ways I get fucked with. So if you link to my courses from my site, you can't get there. But watch this. Just watch. If you go to rogueways. Oh, look, it's already there. Thinkific.com and just enter it in there. Pops right up. Like, what? Why couldn't it just link there? That's so frustrating. I deal with this shit nonstop. People do not necessarily understand. I know a lot of you really do understand. You've been here long enough that you get it, but Jesus Christ, it's frustrating. So anyways, if you go to rogueways.thinkific.com, not from the site, because linking from there is apparently a big sin, then you can see all the courses that I have to offer. And I've put a lot up here. So the newest ones, if you've been paying attention, is Deeper into Tarot. This is a follow-up for Tarot for Beginners. So once you go deeper into Tarot, then that's cool. I also have Opened the Door to Tarot as a bundle. It's 3 courses. That's the Tarot for Beginners, Deeper into Tarot, and the Psycho Spiritual Protection course. I've got Mantras and Manifestation for free. Anybody can go take that right now at rogueways.thinkific.com. Open the Door to Your Depth is another bundle of 3 courses. It's Intro to Meditation, Intro to Chakras, and Psycho-Spiritual Protection. And Intro to Meditation and Intro to Chakra and Empowerment are also here. So lots of bundles, lots of courses, all of them here at rogueways.thinkific.com. And that is an awesome way to just get deeper with yourself, especially if you're interested in a lot of what we talk about on Middle Path and you want to do some of this yourself. It's not Brighter You, but it's as close as you can get without doing Brighter You. So that is fun as well. Yeah, and that's all I wanted to think about there. I also wanted to just share with people. I'm just trying to do better at really telling people all the things I do because there's so much. But the thing I'm most excited about, and I'm going to go here from my link tree because I don't know how many people know I also have a link tree, and you can see by how many links just how much stuff I do. There's a lot of it, a lot of it all over the place. And you can link to any of the things I just talked about here from Linktree. So Linktree is really handy. It's always the first link under every show I do, whether you're watching it or listening to it on any podcast app or any platform. But if you see here, you see the new audiobook is out now. I am so excited. It has finally been approved just yesterday. You can go to Audible. You can find Vitalis Sine Curve of Aeons, Book 1 by Lindsay Sharman. I am sure if you search for Lindsay Sharman, it would also come up. If you search for Sine Curve of Aeons, it will also come up. You can, if you've never done Audible before, you can even get this for free by signing up to Audible. It's always true for them that anybody can start their free 30-day trial and get this. It doesn't matter if you finish listening before the 30-day trial is up. You always have it in your Audible library, whether you're currently paying for a subscription or not. So you can get that free month, get this book, and just have it sitting there and ready for you. I also have free codes for anybody who's a supporter who wants one and doesn't have their free trial for Audible still available because they already used it some other time. I have a code for you to get this for free if you want it. And so all you have to do is let me know. But again, it's for supporters only that get the free audiobook. And I made that promise years ago. That's how long we've been trying to get this audiobook together and out, is that years ago I told every supporter, if you're a supporter at any level, you can have the audiobook for free when it comes out. So I'm excited to share that with you. I actually have a limited amount of coupons that it's not under my control, but I'm happy to share them until they're gone. So you just let me know if you need one and you're a supporter. And if you're not a supporter, you want this, or if you just want to support me, then you can go into Audible and buy this right now, use your credits, and get Sine Curve of Aeons on Audible. I'm so excited about it, and it's really beautiful. If you caught me on Innerverse last week with Chance is the narrator. So Chance Garden did it. It's almost 20 hours. It's a pretty thick book. It's super good story, though. You'll love it. I'm going to read you the description really quick in case you're interested. Book 1 in the Sine Curve of Aeons trilogy ravages humanity in evil clutches that grasp even the highest minds of the Golden Age, leaving those of us here in the Dark Age without a chance. Whether the darkness seeps through the micro failures of our highest selves or the electronic onslaught of a polluted and modern disconnection from nature, something of our connection to soul lives on. Will it be enough? Jesu follows her heart, even when it rips her life apart and asks her to sacrifice everything in order to save all of herself and all of the world. But darkness comes calling far before she could ever hope to muster enough power to save anything at all. What will the world, blind to its own failures, do to stop the inevitable? Interplanetary destruction hurtles from the shadowy reaches of inner and outer space, ready to decimate any who refuse to see. It's a pretty epic story. That's why it spans ages, and that's why it's called the Sine Curve of Aeons. And the newest Earth, A Trough in Time, will also be an audiobook eventually, but both of those are available in paperback right now and hardcover in a few places, I think. So if you like to just hold the book and read it, that's also really fun, and you can get those, like I said, on my site, rogueways.org. So we're going to get into the show now, which means we're going to say goodbye to people. What's up, Mojo Shop and Tina Bina, the only people who said hello in YouTube, so I can see comments. Much love to you guys. And wherever else you may be watching and commenting that I don't see no matter what happens, even if everything's working perfectly, much love to you guys. And I will see you another time. So if you want to get the rest of this show and you're sad that you're getting cut off right now, go to Rockfin and become a supporter and you will have it. All right. Bye-bye. Otherwise, wait. Now they changed everything and they made it so hard for me to know what's even happening. So making sure I'm turning off the right streams. And good. We're still on Rockfin. I can't actually turn off the Rockfin stream. They made sure that they covered that with a big old need help button, which like, no, I mean, maybe, but you're probably not going to give me the kind of help I need. So, oh man, there's so many more things I meant to say. Well, I got a lot of them. I seriously, like, I have a list this long of, you probably can't see that, but this is how long it is of things that I want to remember to tell people, like follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, take the meditations weekly and do this and that. And I suck at it. I'm on other people's shows and I'm like, yeah, I like write books and stuff. And, you know, like I don't even mention my show sometimes. It's like ridiculous. I am the worst self-promoter ever. But I'm getting better at it. And I am going to be really lucky if I ever am able to have someone who can support me in that and be better at it than me. So I like that you could just see me wrapping up my headphones there for no reason, but I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit distracted today. I've meditated for 2.5 hours, I'm going to say. Like, it's crazy, and I still, like, my mind is, like, all over. I don't know if it's that full moon we had yesterday. I don't know if it hit you guys as hard as it hit me. Whew, it was intense, and last night was intense. So, yeah. I'm glad if we make it through this show, we're doing great. I just wanted to start with this quote. I love it so much. This show actually just has a bunch of things I love mashed together, but there is like a slight theme which makes me happy, and it's, you know, this duality and Trinity, unity, quaternity, eternity sort of concept is all woven throughout. So it's going to be a fun wander through the madness, but this is Leonardo da Vinci, and he said, where the spirit does not work with the hand, there is no art. And it's so funny because I've told this story before where I met God. I'm like really emotional just thinking about it. It's really probably the best moment of my life. One of a few experiences similar to it, but probably the best. If I had to rank them, I think it'd be at the top. Because if you could be in just pure your concept of God, that energy and that feeling, I think it'd be the best moment of your life too. And I'm not saying you haven't. I just was able to remember this for some reason. And thank you. Dakota says most people have one or two things to promote. You have about 500, so it's understandable. I really do. And that's not a problem, right? I should feel blessed about that. I'm very diversified. It is a bit insane, but anyways, so I met God, and so God walks into a bar. No, I walked into God's light, and I was held like a child. It was actually, for part of it, I was held like a baby, and for part of it, I was like sitting next to him, perhaps like we were sitting on like a bench or something almost. Like we were kind of swinging, and it was all very exceptionally soothing and healing and uplifting and beautiful. And I don't know about you, if you've ever sort of seen or worked with your essence or your higher self or whatever you would like to call that thing that is you. But for me, I'm like a little child. I'm like an adult, but I'm like a little child. I'm like very excited about things. I'm like super... the part of me that I've sort of like tried to tone down because people take it as me being stupid or incapable or like naive or easily fooled. So I've had to sort of like work my whole life to like push that part back a little bit more, but she's still there, and that's like who I actually am. So that's who I am in this experience, hanging out with God, and I got to ask all of these questions, and I have questions, and it's good because not everyone has them. And if you do too, you're doing good. That's probably why we're here together. It's literally true that many people don't ask questions, both because they don't have any, which is the saddest state, and often because they are scared to ask because of how it might make them look, how they fear that it might make them look stupid to ask a question, any question, when it's actually exactly the opposite. Not asking a question you have is the stupid thing. I hate people who say stupid questions. There really are no such things as stupid questions. If you're in a space where you need that information and don't seem to have it, then that is a good question, period. People who say there are stupid questions might be the stupid ones, perhaps. So I'm asking all these questions because I have a lot of questions all the time naturally, and that is a good thing. And I ask, what are you the reason that art exists? And I meant like fine art. I meant like Leonardo da Vinci's art. And God looked at me like, how did you come up with that? How did you know the answer already? Both like, how are you, asking this? How did you even think of this? And then also like, yeah, of course, like you already know that. So it was really an interesting thing. And he was like, yeah, of course I do. And I say he, because God is like the bearded white God in the clouds to me. That's my God. As a personified being, as the actual like energy of what's going on, I understand it's formless, nameless, genderless, sexless, but like if I'm going to personify it and interact with it like a person, that's what it looks like. Actually, the first time I ever met God, God was a giant black man just laughing at a table with cornucopia of plenty on it, which is fucking awesome. Like super awesome. It was hilarious. And he actually gave me the same exact look. And now that I'm thinking about that, so did Angel Gabriel one time when I met him. So how interesting. And that was in a totally different life. So that look must just be the look they give me. And so at least I'm not super racist, right? If in my deepest travels at the subconscious or superconscious, whatever you want to call it, level, if God can be a giant black man, I think that whenever the next person calls me a racist, that's what I should tell them, right? They'll be like, okie dokie, crazy sauce. So yeah, if spirit is working through you, there's art. If spirit is not working through you, it's just what? I don't know, design. But design could be art too. It's just emptiness. It's just like filler. It's just most of the shit we probably see around that is supposedly art. Like everything you see on like the Target fake wall hanging things that you can buy, or like everything that's in Hobby Lobby. Like it's that. What do you call that? Just kitsch? I don't know. That's what it is if spirit does not work the hand. If spirit does not work any aspect of us, in fact, it's not really anything. It's just empty and meaningless filler. It's interesting. It reminds me of Robert Blond, who was on the show not long ago, and he said he has maybe a moment or two some days where he's not just fully present in the moment. And if you can imagine that, like that's spirit working through you. That's when you're really able to just be in that and have a full just channel of that constantly. And even then, he still gets out of the way for more to come through if he's doing a reading for you, right? So that's just another interesting aspect. But spirit does not work with the hand. There is no art. We can just replace that with anything we want. Where spirit does not work with the mouth, there is no substance. Where spirit does not work with the eye, there is no beauty. Where spirit does not work with the body, there is no grace. I don't know, we could fill this with all kinds of things. Leonardo da Vinci is absolutely right. And it's just, he knew the answer to the question that I asked God before I did. He already said it here in this quote. So I loved that. I loved finding that. Oops, we'll just zoom into this mountain. It's actually interesting because we're going to talk about mountains and this exact sort of shape of them. They're very feminine like this. It's very interesting. I don't understand because I know some mountains have a masculine spirit, but there's something about this that is a feminine shape. It's not just because it looks like a boob on the side. That's not why I'm feeling that way. There's something else, and we'll get to it. I do have some interesting things first. I just came across this, the travel.com places on Earth with no gravity. And half of these are like not gravity, but some of them are actual gravity anomalies, which I find fascinating. So this isn't necessarily an anomaly. There's rocks like this that are balanced in super precarious ways, and it's not that gravity isn't working. It's that they have just enough like friction and inertia that they're just going to sit there a bit longer. Sometime they are going to fall, but we're watching them in that moment where they're like still teetering. And for a rock, that can take, who knows, hundreds of years, thousands. We won't know. We're so fast that it seems to us like gravity is suspended, but that's just how it rolls. There are a couple of these roads, though, and some of them clearly say in the description that cars roll up the hill or seem to roll up the hill, but that it's actually just an optical illusion. But some of them, it says cars roll up the hill and no one knows why. So that makes me think it's not an optical illusion if they point out on other ones like this on Jeju Island, which Jeju Island is famous in Korea for many, many things. Most of them are penises, penis statues, and other things like that. I didn't know they also had a mysterious road of no gravity. I've been to places like this where it's this house is actually on a hill and they built it sideways and then they go in and stand like that, or they put a marble somewhere and it seems to roll uphill, and those are generally optical illusions too. But this magnetic hill in India is one of those ones where they don't say it's an optical illusion. You can actually see in the picture the hill does actually move up, and people will have their cars off and in neutral and they will be pulled up the hill. Like, what's under that? Because the other thing about mountains, which some have a masculine spirit, some have a feminine spirit, but all have this feminine sort of shape and energy, and maybe that's just the earth. Maybe that's just the earth I'm feeling. But the other thing about mountains is they're often mysterious portals. This is where we see lots of Wogie activity, lots of Bigfoot activity. Sometimes people see saints come back and appear in certain places that are almost always connected with these mountains. So often these mountains are connected with the idea that interdimensional portals or interdimensional travelers are coming through. And so would there be some actual mechanical or physical phenomenon that's allowing that to come through? And that's what's pulling this car up or this motorcycle up or whatever? That's pretty crazy. Hoover Dam they just have in there because it's tall. It doesn't even make sense. In Armenia, there's another gravity anomaly. Cars are pulled uphill again in this one. This is also where a river flows uphill. And you know what's interesting is this gravity hill in Armenia on Mount Aragats is right next to Mount, oh, of course, I'm going to forget the name now of that mountain that's in the Bible where the frickin' Noah's Ark landed. Wow. And so, yeah, that mountain is here, which we've talked to Gary Wayne before about that being the mountain where, possibly the Nephilim also stepped down first. So again, interdimensional travelers or beings or supernatural beings of some sort come down to these mountains, and supernatural beings. Interesting. And that they might produce magnetic anomalies and other things where water would flow uphill and cars would be pulled uphill is pretty freaking impressive. There's Magnetic Hill in Canada, and it's known for, again, moving vehicles and objects uphill. It is bizarre. It was noticed in 1930, and it still draws curious tourists. There's this sign here to show people they've arrived at the Magnetic Hill. I wonder if cars today would be as likely to be pulled up as cars back then. Cars back then were actually made of metal, and now they're just mostly made of plastic and electronics. So the magnetic anomaly can't be that big, or it would just fry all that stuff. We've got Peanut Street in Brazil, another one where things, objects are said to move uphill. And in Hudson Bay, there is less gravity. And this is just fact. Like, you can go there, you can weigh yourself outside of the magnetic anomaly area, and you will weigh a certain amount, and then you step into the magnetic anomaly area, and you will weigh less. Isn't that interesting? There's something that Kurt Vonnegut wrote a while ago, and I forget which one it is, but one of his many books, the less known ones, is about gravity changing, kind of somewhat frequently on and off all throughout the world, and people will weigh more or less, and they'll some days not even be able to get up off the ground because gravity is too much. And it's interesting, you can literally go experience a little bit of weightlessness in Hudson Bay, Canada. So I had never heard about these things before, but they were interestingly connected somewhat to the things that we're talking about in this episode, especially the idea of, mountains as portals, as possible interdimensional portal spaces, as having possible feminine or masculine energy, and having these anomalies and these sort of supernatural type energies seeming to be connected with them. We also have, this is from July 8th, and this is on ifuckinglovescience.com, and it says a crack opened in Earth's magnetic field on Thursday and stayed open for 14 hours. And the subheading is, what did it let in or out? And I was like, interesting question. I mean, I know it's a science page, and what they mean is, what kinds of electromagnetic energies were let in or out. And that's also, though, how I feel about spiritual energy, is it's of the similar spectrum. So what did get let in or out? We're all focused on CERN and these things, but there's a reason we have a protective barrier on the Earth, and it might not just be to protect us from the sun's solar magnetic rays and storms and projections and whatnot, right? So I thought that was very interesting. What might come in both through some sort of portals we have in mountains and other things, but what might come in through this crack in the magnetic protective sheath as well. So I guess we had some really powerful auroras around that time, and the rest of this is all sciencey stuff about like how many kps and stuff, which I don't really care about. But it's interesting nonetheless what came in and what went out. Hopefully we shed a lot of garbage and darkness that had accumulated in this body called Earth, and hopefully we let in a lot of uplifted, illuminating, healing light. And that's my intention for what came in and out. I wanted to tell this story of being at this hot spring now up in Liard Hot Springs in Canada. And I took this picture because the night before I talked to a man who is a local there and had been going there for decades. He had 40 years or more. And he said he'd come on night, he'd snuck in at night, he'd snuck in on weekends, he'd snuck in the morning, he'd like been there in all hours of the day on every single day of the week, and he'd tried everything he could, and he had never been in the hot spring alone. And he started talking to other people, and no one else had either. And they said, you know what, that's just the way this hot spring works. There is no time where you can come and be alone. It's not the type of place you can be alone. And I was like, that is fascinating. I've also obviously only been here for a day, but I've never been here alone either. I mean, I was just confirming that I also hadn't been, as unamazing as that was for the short amount of time I was there. Literally the next morning, I woke up at a very, maybe a little early, but there's tons of people there. Like, it's not that early. It's not like I woke up at the butt crack of dawn. I just woke up when I woke up, which tends to be very early when I'm camping. And I just walked out there casually, and I got there and no one was there. And for a second I thought, well, surely people are in the dressing rooms. There's little dressing rooms you can change clothes. There's no toilets or running water or anything. It's just, to go be private for a second. So surely there's people in there. So I was just, and no one was there. No one was in the dressing rooms. And I was like, what are the, first of all, what are the chances? Sounds like they're like 10 billion to 1. Second of all, what are the chances that someone would tell me that the night before by total chance? I just said hello to him and he just started talking. It's not necessarily the type of place where you just sit around and talk to strangers necessarily. So that conversation wasn't like destined to happen, but clearly it was. And so I was in this amazingly beautiful, one of the most beautiful, most natural setting, well-preserved hot springs I've ever been in. There is no additives. There's no clearing. There's no funneling it through some sort of a sieve or whatever, like to filter shit out. Nothing. It's just straight out of the source right there for you. And I got to be in it by myself for hours. And I don't know why. except that while I was sitting there becoming more and more like one with nature and just sitting deep inside of it, you can float in this water, you can just like exulting in this amazing experience I had given myself. After some of the most terrifying moments in my life had passed merely days before, I looked up and I saw the sun and I thought, oh yeah, you can sun gaze when it's this low. My whole life, I'm surrounded by mountains. I love being around mountains. I have learned through various channels that that's one of my sole purposes, is to help connect and reconnect with and heal the mountains and allow them to heal us as well, which is part of this show tonight too. So I'm always surrounded by them. So I often am not around the sun at the right angle to be able to sun gaze. And the sun was here and I was able to finally, and I was like, wow, I get to do it. And so I started staring at the sun and I started receiving really clear communications from the sun. Really clear communications from, like, and people ask sometimes, like, how do you know? And how does it sound? Or how does it look? Or how does it feel? And all I can say is if it's happening to you, you know, because it is not your voice in your head. It's not even really a voice you're hearing, but you know how you hear your thoughts, sort of. It's that type of hearing, right? You're not actually hearing anything. It's not a real sound. But you understand it in your head. You hear it, or whatever word you need to use to understand how you understand your thoughts is the same, but it's like not your thoughts, and you know that. It's clear. So I knew that, and it was very much wanting me to understand that there is a purpose here, not just for me, for any of you listening as well, to unite the two into one. And of course, then you're like, what two? How one? What do you mean? Because I have a lot of questions, as I did with God. I have a million things I want to know. And I've learned many, many times, you don't just flood these beings with questions. You just sit with it for a while, because they're telling it to you in a way different from the way you've received any other information. And when you sit with it for a while, things just become clearer and clearer. And it is not as linear as having this conversation between you and another person. And there was lots of other messages, and I wrote all about it afterwards when I finally got back to my van. And then I fell asleep, and then I came back later, and there was people there. And because I was like, did I fall into a different dimension where there's no people for a second? No, they were there. I just had this magical one chance. Oh man, one of the best moments of my life again. So what is that? Bringing these two things together, unite this two things that are separated back into one. And then I realized it actually had been like a theme in my life. Like this happens over and over again, actually, is that I get these synchronicities and these connections. And then I kind of realized, like, that's what my books are about. Like, I didn't mean for them to be. If you know the story of the books, you know I didn't mean any of it to be, but there it was. And that's in there too, right? And I'm not going to spoil anything for you, so I won't tell you how. But if you read it, you'll be like, oh, there it is. It's really obvious, actually, once you get there. You're like, yeah, the two things do maybe have to become one. Have to, maybe. Very, very interesting. So that was a magical, beautiful moment, a beautiful communication as well. And this is, of course, the essence of it is that this duality has to become a unity. A unity, from a duality to a unity. So one of the other times in my life that message is brought to me, and I love that this gets to happen in the form of this sun and this moon, because they also are two. They also are dual. It would be catastrophic for us if they became one. Maybe that'd be a good thing. Who knows? But this Vesica Pisces also came into my life in a very synchronistic way. And the Vesica Pisces also taught me the exact same thing, but in a totally different way. And it was so random. I actually have a piece on my site that I probably should have pulled up, but it would take too long to read it all. But it's a really beautiful piece. And if you want to go find it, you can. If you go to the site and you click on, oh, come on. This thing is so ridiculous. Musings. That's like the blog. That's where the blog is. And it actually, I think the picture of it is of a Vesica Pisces when you find it. And it tells you the story of this series of synchronicities in my life that were so profound at the time. And, you know, I tell people, like, sometimes it's not just synchronicities and it's not just like a handful in a day. I call them synchro trains, and it's when almost every single moment of every single day is like non-stop, just hammering the message in to the point where I want to like scream, like, okay, like I get it. Like, a message received, dude, like, calm down, because it's a little overwhelming. Not gonna lie. Sometimes it's like a bit much when like the passing song on a car radio and the bird that flies by and the thing you're hearing in your headphones are like all saying the same thing. You're like, okay, dude. So it can be like that, though. So it's called Holy Trinity and Sacred Geometry is the piece on the site. No, it's not. My bad. That's a totally different thing. That also has a Vesca Pisces on the front. Man, maybe it's not. I know it's here, but I think it's Wisdom of Dreams, actually. Yeah, and this is also when I quit drinking. So anyways, the Vesca Pisces is this shape. Someone was trying to describe it to me, and he is incredibly bad at speaking human to people. And so I was trying to describe this to me, and I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, dude. And I was like, and he's like, you know, and it's like ripples, and it's like when two ripples meet, and then there's like more ripples, but in other ways, and there's like an opening and a portal. And I was like, what the hell are you saying? Like, I don't even know what you mean. And then like that night I like dreamt of it, and then I woke up in the morning and someone had like posted a picture of it, and I didn't know it was called the Vesca Pisces. He could have just said that, right? I didn't know. I saw the picture of it and I was like, that's what he was just fucking telling me about. So I sent it to him and I was like, this. And he's like, yeah, I was just going to send you that same picture. And I was like, dude, what? And the Vesca Pisces is also these two things. It's like a Venn diagram for those of you who have no idea what the fuck and can't see this picture because you're listening to it. It's a Venn diagram. It's the two circles overlap and they make this oval in the middle. And we've done a whole show just on this. It's a fun show. You should go back and listen to it. And it was the same thing. And even our discussion, even me and this person are like polar opposites. And he's trying to tell me this. And the way he talks is like not with human words and not well. And the way I talk is like, here's this very detailed thing. Here's a symbol of it. Here's a metaphor for it. Here's another way of looking at it. And like, now we can move on. Like, it's very clear most of the time. And even when I'm not very clear headed, I think I can communicate somewhat well. So even that was like this Vesca Pisces is these two opposing things. They come together, and the place where they merge and overlap, there is a new canal. And the coolest, it's not the coolest, there's so many coolest things about this, but one of the coolest things is when you look at that shape, you understand instantly what it means, because that is also the shape of the female vagina when it's birthing, right? It's this giant pointed oval, and that is where the universe moves through. A whole new universe comes from there. That's some wild shit. So this synchronicity was similar, but this was earlier. The Liard Hot Springs thing with the sun was much later. And so then I started to feel like, am I not getting the picture? Because even earlier than that, Glastonbury Tour had just fallen into my life, and it was in the weirdest way. I was just trying to log into something on my computer, which literally no one had ever used but me. It just doesn't have, I just don't really like, even people I'm living with or like my significant other, like they don't touch my computer. Very, very, very exceptionally rarely. And so this computer had never been touched by anyone but me, as far as I know. Who knows who was on it when I wasn't aware, and what CIA agents do what, who knows? You know, and I guess if like a hacker came in and did that, it would be such a stupid and pointless trick. But I logged into something, and you know how there's autofill, it remembers like every email that's ever been made or entered into any field, you know, that kind of shit. Instead of hitting my email letter, I hit G for some reason. And what popped up was Glastonbury7@gmail.com. And I was like, who, what? How did that even pop up? What is Glastonbury7@gmail.com? Who was on my computer was my first thought. And I was actually angry. I was like, why were you touching my things? Who are you even? And I was like, asked the person I was living with, I was like, did you or one of your stupid friends like touch my computer and try to log into something? And They were like, I don't think so. And I was like, well, who of your friends is glastonbury7@gmail.com? They're like, I've never heard that. And I was like, well, I'm emailing this motherfucker. I'm going to see why they touched my computer. And so I emailed them and I was like, hey, who is this? And why were you on my computer? You may have already guessed, I never got an email back. I don't know who that is. I don't know how it ended up on my computer. We never came up with any. We whacked our brains. We went through everybody. We tried to find, we looked at like what their emails were and nothing. No one had that email. How did it get on my computer as an autofill? So then I was like, well, what's Glastonbury? I, believe it or not, had never heard of Glastonbury. I've been to England. I never heard of Glastonbury. I get it's like a hugely famous like music festival happens there and shit. I don't care about, you may not know this about me, but I don't really care about music. When I went to concerts, it was purely to get high. I didn't care in any way about what was actually going on there. So I didn't know about this thing. So Glastonbury, what I first found was the concert, and I was like, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. And then I found the tour, Glastonbury tour. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And you know what? You know what's weird about the tour is there's 7 terraces. 7 deep, roughly symmetrical terraces. And these terraces go all the way around the tor or the hill. Here's a bigger view of it. It looks somewhat like an eye, almost like the Eye of Horus. These terraces, they go around, there's 7 of them. They're pretty large. You can see like how many farm fields around here. You can see these big roads go by. Like this is a huge hill in these fields. And what you're supposed to do, it turns out, is go around and you walk all the way around all 7. Walk all the way around all 7. And the hill is the feminine. The hill is the feminine. Again, this is like a mountain. And it represents a feminine energy. And this has been a sacred site for, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of years, like a long time. Neolithic flint tools are there. Do they even know when these 7 symmetrical terraces were created? No, their formation remains a mystery. They don't even know who made it. They do know who made this little, thing at the top here, which is somehow connected to Michael the Archangel. I'm not surprised. Michael the Archangel is the first angel that came to help me with my life. So the first church there was dedicated to Saint Michael. Oh, maybe that's different actually than Archangel. Oh no, that's Archangel Michael. So, and then they built this big stone thing on top of it. So before the church even, there was a sacred site here. In fact, what was there before any of that? A well. A well was there. A water source was there. There's always sacred water in these places. They're always inside the hill. I think that's part of what makes them feminine. They have this inner well. That is a feminine energy. The inner well is the feminine energy, and the stone or the mountain around it on top of it is still feminine. It's just kind of the outer shell, like the egg, right? The outer shell of the egg. It seems to have been called Ynys yr Afalon, meaning the Isle of Avalon. So it's also connected with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. They've also thought perhaps it's the possible location for the Holy Grail. There's all kinds of stuff connected with it. But those 7, why Glastonbury 7? Well, there's 7 terraces. And I didn't understand why. But there was something about this that was very feminine. And there was this idea that the masculine energy had to be brought to it. They had to be united in some way. And I was like, I don't know, though. I don't understand. These were just synchronicities happening around this event where this email appeared on my computer. I'm sure it sounds stupid for some people. They're like, I don't get it. Like an email just was there. But like you would feel the same. If you went to go type in your email, accidentally hit G and a whole new email address auto-filled in there, you'd be like, who the fuck touched my computer? And no one, I've emailed it a few more times just to see like, who are you? And no one ever replies. So I'm like, I don't think that exists. I think this was, again, one of the things, just like the Key of Transformational Healing book being, put into my calendar It's like the baddies can use this method, and so can the goodies. And I think the goodies did that too, to guide me again one step into this madness. So that was first, and then I got this synchronicity with Vesica Pisces, and then I was in Leo at Hot Springs, and the sun told me, you have to bring the two together into one. Like, well, man, I mean, is this like a personal mission, or am I supposed to do that internally, or am I supposed to go to Glastonbury tour and like do something, right? But I'm not actually crazy enough to just go to Glastonbury tour and do it. Someday in my life it's going to happen, but it's going to happen naturally, not because an email address appeared on my computer. And if it was going to happen that way, a lot more would have needed to happen, and they know that, so they would have made it happen. But you know, we also have this symbolism in connection with King Arthur, especially of the sword in the stone. And you think like stone, it feels kind of masculine, and you know, but check out, I mean, there is no better symbolism than this. The sword is very clearly the masculine, the stone therefore is the feminine. So if the Glastonbury tour is a feminine hill, this little structure on top, is that their attempt at the masculine? Is that their attempt to bring it there? I don't know. I know I'd like to go down straight under that and see what's down here in this well. That would be good. But even the sword and the stone is a similar sort of metaphor for the Vesica Pisces and what the sun told me, and bringing this duality together into this unity. And again, we know that all that could possibly do is create a whole new universe. A whole new universe is birthed from that. When two opposing, equal opposites are brought together, that's what we do. That's what men and women do together. We create babies. They're a whole new little universe. They're not you. They're not the other person. They are them. They are created in the same way. The sword and the stone is similar. It got me wondering, why would you want to pull the sword out of the stone? But maybe that's a dark magician's thing. Maybe they're like, no, we need to separate the two. The sun is like, oh, we need to unite the two, and the dark magician's like, no, we need to separate the two. Pull that sword right out of that stone. Who can do it? You're so strong if you do. But I'm like, I think the sword's cool embedded in the stone. I think it wants to be there. I think that's its home. I think those two things are meant to be together. They balance each other perfectly. But maybe I'm missing a little bit. I love this. I actually saw this the other day. Lindsay Smith in the chat says, the moon, the sun, and the stars. That's what I call my three kids. I love that you do that. And I loved this. This is from James Stevens. I don't know who that is, but he said, neither a sword nor a thought should ever be allowed to rust. And you know, the sword is a representation of our mind. It is a representation of our thoughts. It is masculine. Thoughts are masculine. They move fast. And there's yin and yang to everything. But if they were going to be one thing, they would be masculine. A sword is masculine as well. And swords can represent our thoughts. So it is appropriate to say a sword, neither a sword nor a thought should ever be allowed to rust. Thought should never be allowed to rust. And it also makes me think, when those things come to you, when God or the universe or the sun is like, hey, put these two things together as one, or hey, check out Glastonbury. Hey, what about the sword and the stone? You're not supposed to just let that sit forever. You're not supposed to let it rest. You are supposed to bring it up and sharpen it every once in a while until the day where you can thrust that, perhaps into a stone. And the sun was also talking much more recently and sharing with me about the number 10. This is such a perplexing number for some people. It's such a concerning number for some people. Some people feel really negatively both about 1, about 0, and about the number 10. And it's very interesting to me. In fact, there's people who say things like 0 doesn't exist in nature, which is absurd. It's insane. It makes me wonder, how did you get to that conclusion? Because I could list a million things that 0 is. And what people generally say is, well, it's nothing. And there's not nothing anywhere. Not even nothing is something. And I'm like, 0 is not nothing. 0 is the circle that contains the nothing. It is the void. And even the void is something, but it's just the potentiality of all things. It is pure potentiality. It is emptiness. It's not nothing. It's emptiness. Emptiness is definitely something. Emptiness is full of every possible thing. And nature is full of that. That is feminine. That is the mountain. That is the well. That is the infinite expanse. That is the moon. It's not nothing. It's empty. It's everywhere. It's the egg in every single ovary, in every single species. That is what zero is. No, it was never meant to be nothing. It's nothing as a representation in a mathematical system we've created. We didn't create it, but we developed symbols to let ourselves understand things better. But we understand also in nature there's no solid, just whole numbers. There's no solid boundaries even between anything. So then someone who was talking about there not being any zeros in nature, and I was saying, well, actually, there's a lot, and here they are. Then they went on to say, well, there's no one either. And I was like, well, now we're just solipsists, which is fine. But now all you can say is there's no nothing. Nothing. There's nothing anywhere, and everything is nothing. And that's stupid. What's the point of that? You've heard me rail against solipsism many times. Because everything is meaningful and everything is something. And yes, there are ones in nature too. There is no definable, discernible boundary between 0 and 1. Not necessarily. There are infinite amounts of division between 0 and 1, right? But you can also understand there's one, I'm one. I'm one body and you're a different body. And we can see that that is distinct. And so you're two, or whatever you want to be, right? But you're separate. So I'm one and you're one. We're one. One is also masculine. It is something that is now happening and made and formed and done and good and moving. It also looks like a masculine member, where 0 looks like a feminine member. Can you say feminine member? You know what I mean. It's a vagina. And the 1 is a penis. And so together, what is 10? What is 10? They're still separate in 10, is what's interesting about 10. They're not together. They're not overlapping. One's not going through the 0, right? They're not merged. But they are together. They are merged in our symbol of them. This is the symbol of the 1 and the 0 together. And some people say 10 is God. A lot of people say 10 is God. So a lot of people say 10 is totality, because in our numerical system that we use most often on Earth, we have a base 10 system. And 10 is the height. That's the last number. 11 is just a 10 and a 1. It's not its own number. I mean, it is, but it's not, right? So 10 is totality. 10 is God. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people say about 9/11 as a calling card to the dark magicians, to the evil that they pull off, to the dates that they use for their biggest magical things. They invert it sometimes with 19, as we've seen in COVID-19, etc. Some people say, well, they do that because it's 9 and then it skips God and it goes to 11. And what better just leave God out of it. That's their whole point, right? Is to erase God out of everything. Out of you, out of the earth, out of mountains, out of swords, out of everything. Out of communication with the sun, out of numbers. So 10 is often that. And this is just one system. There's a million numerical systems. There's a million numerologist systems. You could go find out, what does 1 mean? And you can get 70 different answers. Like, there's a lot. I'm going with a very old school, traditional look at some of these things. And so, yes, there's a 0 in nature. There's a 1 in nature. When they come together in nature, too, just like in this numerical system, perhaps they represent more than they could ever be apart. Perhaps when the 2 come together, something absolutely new is born. And that would be a unity from a duality. The moment itself of creation is the unity, transcending all, creating as gods do. And then if you actually create a person or a life or whatnot, then you're literally creating as gods do as well. And that also is a unity. It's a unity of your 2 essences together. It's also its whole own thing. And so now you also have a trinity. And then you can just go from here and you can spin off into everything. And we'll look a little bit about that, how you go from duality to unity to trinity. But look how you didn't go from 1 to 2 to 3. You actually went from 0 to 2, because you went from the void of the expanse of the all to the polarity, the duality that we live in. And when those united, you come up with a third. Now you're in the trinity. So you went from 0 to 2 to 3, or 1 again, or 2, or 3, I mean. Depending on how you look at that, you could go to unity or to trinity. You're both. 0 to 2 to 1 to 3, we'll say. So there's some sort of pattern here as well. You can start to map it out and you can see like how the relationship comes up between each of these things. But this is just a random fun site I found. This is called theosymmetry, meaning the symmetry of God, right? Theo is the root, means God, and symmetry means symmetry. And this article that this person has written, I was just going to see if I could see this person's name actually, which I should have done before I even started. Oh, and they even cite their sources. Like, what a little badass. Oh, I'm going to have to just read like everything this person wrote because this just seems like such a cool. I love like actual blogs. I love people who write things that are beautiful. Theophilosophical physics, ponderings, reflections on scripture, reflections on fandom, the collective vision, and home are their options. I can't find their name, but again, theosymmetry.wordpress.com. They have this quote at the top. It says, "I'm a very passionate believer in the unity of knowledge. There is one world of reality, one world of our experience that we're seeking to describe." And that is interesting as it relates to our discussion here tonight as well. Is there just one anyway? Are we just imagining the duality and there was only ever one thing? The more I look at everything, the more I see there's only one thing. I mean everything, like my whole life, everything, every tradition I've come across, every spiritual teacher I've worked with, all of them say the exact same things. None of them say anything new. They all give me different tricks, different tools, different practices, and those always take me deeper and deeper and deeper, and they're all beautiful, and I love them. So there is difference, but the essence of it, the quality of it, all the same. It's all the same. And that's why I teach what I teach now. It's based on the condensation of all of those into the best practices I could find. So he talks about unity first. He doesn't even start at zero, but zero is its own type of unity. Zero is its own type of one. Oh, let's see what Lindsay Smith is sharing here in the chat. Yes, she says, first of all, it makes more sense for the male to be the sword as the protector of the divinely feminine. I agree, absolutely. Lindsay says 10 also can equal the earth, and 11 can equal the bridge or the pillars to heaven, and heaven is 12. I like that. That's according to my quality of numbers lessons, which I love. Lindsay teaches her kids really cool stuff. Yeah, it blows my mind too. It's super fun. So this person is writing unity, and he says, God as the essence is simple. He's absolute. She is infinite. I use those pronouns because they will be very important later in this section. But it's also good to remember that God transcends gender and unites the genders in that same transcendence. So here is where the duality becomes the unity rather. And when the Son was saying you have to make the two become one, the message becomes clearer and clearer. It's not just with masculine and feminine though. It is with any equal opposites, in my opinion. But it's easiest to talk about masculine and feminine. It's easiest to talk about gender. They go on to say, God is father, but also mother. To deny that is in blasphemy, for God is unlike created things with definite genders. We could also say far more correctly that God is analogically father and mother, since he is no mere creaturely parent. But as the essence in its fullness, we can consider God as neither. The best name is the one, the self, the first Plotinian, the second Hindi. From this perspective, only the one exists. It is most real, and therefore the lower levels are invisible, non-existent, and absorbed in its light. This is the perspective of God as both beginning and end. God is both the source of creation and its very apokatastasis. Oh, it's funny, I was just thinking of John Coleman, who's going to be on the show again soon, and that's the name of his school, and he would probably love this article. When considered in itself, for the one creation never begins, not to talk of ending. The logic of the eternal present, that is the life of the one, forbids it from knowing change, because change is ultimately unreal. All is God, and God is in all. Thus, according to some guy, is what is meant by samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. Unity with God, theosis, the substance of salvation, is realizing the unreality of finitude, the illusion of creation, and the defeat of death. Like St. Maximus says, theosis means we become unoriginate, or without beginning, and therefore without end. And so I'm just remembering another synchronicity that just happened now that I'm talking about all of this, where I just was in acupuncture the other day, yesterday. And sorry, let me just finish this section that this guy's writing, and then I'll share that. The knower receives from God as reward God himself. Whosoever enters into God attains the truth of all things and becomes himself the truth. It is not cause for surprise that he then sees in himself, and as if it were him, everything that exists outside God. Similarly, someone, the yogi, whose intelligence is perfect, contemplates all things as dwelling in himself, and thus he perceives by the eye of knowledge that everything is Atma, or the self. In other words, the one in his fullness becomes the center of our identity, Christ in you, the hope of eternal glory. So this person is clearly not a traditional Christian, but they are doing what all good syncretists do, and that is comparing that these things are repeated in every religion, every tradition, over and over again. These ideas of all, of unity, of oneness, of transcending self, of reuniting with God, of salvation, and that we just sort of twist it around from time to time. But you may have also been saying to yourself, wow, that sounds very hermetic. This is kind of like the Kybalion that we just read. So yesterday, speaking of especially what Maximus says, unoriginated or without beginning and therefore without end, yesterday in acupuncture, I just meditate on accident, and acupuncture just happens, which makes sense because that's the whole point of acupuncture is you're working with your energy fields and systems. And my acupuncturist always comes back in, and he'll be, if it was like a really powerful meditation, he'll be like, whoa, you had a very good rest. He'll call it a rest. And I'll say, yeah, I did. And if I just kind of had a mediocre one, he's like, oh, I hope you had a good rest. Like, he can tell, which makes me really happy. Like, that's a good acupuncturist. So I went real deep, and I was presented with a portal, and I was very aware that I could go through it or not. By a portal, I actually mean a tunnel of portal-like energy that seemed to stretch in between dimensions. And sometimes things seem like this to me when I'm doing ceremonies for people, or there's a soul retrieval happening, or a past life regression. It'll be similar. So I understand this type of travel to be between dimensions, which is also just to say, and it's moving through time and space in ways that we otherwise think we can't. And I thought, sure, why not? So I went through it. And I could tell some things were waiting for me on the other side, and they weren't good, but I wasn't scared. So I went through, and there was a battle of sorts, which was fine, because these days, sometimes that's just how it goes. It's not so hard anymore. And let me take a drink of water. And as soon as that battle was done, one of my dragon guides, who's so beautiful and amazing, I'm so blessed to have such a high, powerful energy worker on my side, came in to protect and heal and sort of wrap things up. And every once in a while he does this thing where he wraps around the whole entire space. Sometimes I call it a soul space. And he bites his own tail. I say he doesn't, I don't even know if he has a gender, but it doesn't matter. Everything's a he to me, unless it's not. And he was biting his own tail and doing that. And I heard very clearly a very interesting poem. And I'm going to try to remember it right now. And it went a little something like this. Here at the end of time and space, I have to believe there is a place where dragon's tail meets dragon's face and breathes the fire of heaven's grace. And I got chills just now saying it. And I thought that's a silly sounding poem because I'm an asshole sometimes. But it was very powerful. It gave me chills then. It gives me chills now. And it makes me wonder what types of things we can do just on accident, just by allowing ourselves to trust in our path and the way forward, and that there will always be a purpose, a reason. And just like other times where dimensional shifts seem to happen to me, I have to believe similar to what that poem said, that there's a good reason that something important actually shifted. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'll go test my blood and find my blood changed yet again. I don't know. But I remember coming back out of that deep meditation and him turning on the lights and him going, whoa, good rest today. And I said, yeah. And thinking, I wonder what changed this time. And so far, I don't see anything. So, it's got to be something pretty subtle, but it was pretty powerful. And it's interesting that the dragon is this thing, too, that has this essence of duality and unity, but it can do it itself, right? Which is similar to what Source and God, what we're describing here, that it can choose to differentiate and be the two. I have a head and a tail, or it can choose to come back together and be the everything, the all, the unity. And that came into play in that experience. So this person, oh gosh, Alex in the chat is saying he's got the communist Chinese parties virus again. I'm very sorry for you. It is actually a hell of a bullshit thing to deal with. Really, truly, I know that a lot of it is spiritual and mental too. So I hope you're also meditating and going deep and allowing some good healing energies to come in for you. All right, so on to his section about duality in this article we're reading. On the other hand, he says, in our slice of reality, we do know that there is change, and even if it is unreal from the perspective of the absolute self, it is still real from the perspective of the relative diffusiveness of that self. Because it is self-effusive, it must pour out its existence in the direction of manifestation, first relativizing itself in divine hypostases or persons, then relativizing itself further as the persons themselves self-diffuse into creation. In other words, the light that reveals the one as that which is most real and therefore the only reality is the same light that drenches the divine persons into being and creation into existence. This distinction is crucial because the divine persons are ineffable in relation to creation and are not mere beings. Rather, they are being itself polarized into persons by the relationship of being with itself, or by being's relationship with beyond being, or the one. This pouring out should not be understood as emanationism, which is foreign to the idea of emanation, as understood by Plotinus and its other proponents. This emanation should be understood as creation is viewed from its source in God, rather than like in the case of the doctrine of creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing, where creation is viewed from where its source is not. They are two sides of the same coin. The one doesn't cease being what it is in an emanation. Same for the hypostases. Creation doesn't change God, neither does emanation. This is where the division between absolute and relative begins. This is God as duality, the source of the distinction between God and his demiurge, and the principle from which evil is inevitable for the lower sections of reality. For although the good diffuses itself, and from it comes beings which are good, radiation also means distance, which is the principle of evil, the old understanding of separation from God as death. All good things are evil in contrast with absolute good. This is so interesting. If you have read The Key of Transformational Healing, you'll understand why this is kind of blowing my mind, because I had not yet read something that put it quite in this way. But in The Key of Transformational Healing, it definitely talks about how far away we are right now from the source, and how it's okay, though, because we have finally been sort of found by source consciousness, and we can choose to connect with it now. So the evil will be less and less in this place, which is a beautiful thought, beautiful thing to manifest as well. They go on to say this inevitability was grasped by the Gnostics, who spoke of an evil demiurge who is the cause of the fall and who opposes God. Of course, their error does not lie in the statement that there is an evil demiurge. Remember, St. Paul speaks of the prince of the power of the air, the ruler of this age, and of him blinding the eyes of the citizens of the world to the truth, or gnosis, according to the Gnostics. Their error was to speak of the intricacies of the divine relativity without the spirit of the gospel. All heresy is alike in that it is a form severed from its substance, the substance here being the spirit of the gospel. It is true that the divine relative is in the sense evil, if we simply understand it as a distance rather than an obfuscation of the divine will. However, this evil and death is suffered for the sake of good. As J.D. Wood put it, creation is the world's protological death that all might enjoy eschatological resurrection. So this idea that evil has to be, it is just disconnection and distance from God, and it is not in itself, therefore, unintended by God, you might say, or unintended, or it is just what it is, is a really simple way to say it. But sin also means similar, right? To sin means to be outside of or separate from. So to sin is just to be separate from God. So you can let all the, religious parts of this go if you want. It doesn't really matter. But the ideas of it are very interesting. And this demiurge, or this, negative evil form, I mean, if it exists like that, if it go down like that, then whatever. It just as equally will come back to good, especially when perhaps the two are reunited into one. As someone else put it in Mariological terms, which just means related to Mary, Eve is life, and this is manifesting Maya. Mary is grace, and this is reintegrating Maya. Eve personifies the demiurge under its aspect of femininity, and Mary is the personification of the Shekinah, of the presence that is both virginal and maternal. Life, being amoral, can be immoral. Grace, being pure substance, is capable of absorbing all accidents. I love this. Grace is like literally beyond our comprehension. We think we understand grace. We come close to understanding it, I think, but I don't think we really understand. And this is my favorite thing about everything. Like everything is, I'm pretty sure at the end of all endings, it is like an accident that everything is saved perfectly and beautifully. Right? Or perhaps that like we don't even go down that path because like a cat walked in front of a thing. Remember the fucking bird dropped like a seed into the CERN and CERN like had to shut down or whatever? That's grace. Like it's just, you couldn't plan for it. You can sharpen your sword all day and you might never have to use it to fight because some bird dropped a seed somewhere. It's beautiful. It's beautiful chaos. And adapting a famous Christological maxim to Hindu concepts, Atma became Maya so that Maya might become Atma. Maya is this, this place of illusion and disconnection and distraction, and Atma is like the whole, the all, the everything. So they're also equal opposites. In other words, the relativity of God is God calling himself, is God himself calling creatures into himself. This is separate from the actual manifestation of evil in the sense of the attempted quenching of the good, which is, as a futile attempt, contrary to the relativity of God itself, because it attempts to subvert it and create another Atma, something impossible, and that will only end in failure. Not even hell can succeed. It will dissolve into the apokatastasis. I love that so much. It's exactly true, though. You're like, no matter how you cut this logically, like, it has to be that way. There is just source. That's all anything is. There's nothing else. So have fun pretending you're evil, I guess, and suffering in the meantime. So he goes on to the Trinity, much shorter. And he says, this is the scene when the relative is split according to the attributes of reverberation, sun, and radiation, spirit. Or if you recall the horizontal Trinity, relativity itself is polarized into being, consciousness, and bliss. The symbol of this could be the triangle, with the top representing either being or beyond being, depending on the perspective. There's also another way of naming the ternary, which is father, mother, and child, which we already talked about today, corresponding to Father, Spirit, and Son, because in a certain sense it is through the separation of the Spirit that the Son is begotten, for the Spirit is the very unity. It is the spirit of Shalom and Shekinah. The reflection, son or child, is a product of the light, spirit or mother, as much as it is the product of the source of the light, the Father. This images the human family and is in a way what the human family images. It is telling us that the Virgin Mary is often associated with the Virgin Mother is often associated with the Spirit, even in the Quran, where it is treated as a false trinity. However, this relationship can also be seen in another way, a more complete way, and that is the quaternity. And you know what? I didn't even know quaternity was a word. I thought I made it up for my book, Sine Curve of Aeons, and that part of the book is one of my favorite parts of the book because it's so wild and crazy, and it's hard for me to imagine getting through it the way the character did. I feel like I'd be stuck for eternity in this delusion. But the quaternity comes up in that, and it's super weird. I was like, I don't know, because I knew quattro means four, and there was something about them celebrating 4 decades of something, and so quaternity was just a word that came to me, and I used it, and then I come to find out it's like got this very significant meaning. It is, or just like Trinity and Unity and Duality and all these. Of course, there's a quaternity. It's not a word I made up, but I didn't know that. So I'm sure you have noticed, this person goes on to say, a trend by now. God, in his self-determination or diffusion towards creation, is continually split or polarized into hypostases, each multiplication corresponding to a certain distance from the undivided essence itself, although without splitting into separate numerical beings. Remember we were just saying you can't really separate things, like you can't really tell the boundaries between things, like there actually isn't boundaries between things, but you also can, and there is. It's kind of what they're talking about here. This division, he says, can continue forever, as the possibilities of manifestation signified by these polarizations are endless. But we will stop at the 4th level, as all the others can be summarized here. Now, instead of a trinity with only one source, Father, imagine that the source in the 2 aspects laid out at the beginning of this section, God as absolute, Father, and God as infinite, Mother. It is because God is infinite that God can contain hypostases and manifestations. It is because God is absolute that he can act as a source of these hypostases and manifestations. God as center acts as source. God as expanse acts as container. I love that. That center, that point is the masculine, and the expanse is the container, which is similar to the symbol that you would get as a sword comes into a stone. If the stone were a circle, you would get that point in the middle. And it's also the same symbol for what? Our son, who's the one who told me about the things. God is in himself a self-inseminating womb. Here the Father and Mother replaces the singular Father of the Trinitarian synthesis, while the Spirit and Son are now daughter and son. Father, Mother, Daughter, and Son. The divine family is complete. Of course, these aren't separate beings, but aspects understood by their relation to each other in God. The 4 can also be described as such. I'm not going to read that quote. So I like it. I'm not going to read that either. And I'm just going to read the conclusion. My conclusion here is basically the same as that I've been pounding on these past few months. Look close enough and you see the divine and timeless truth of even the most vile and misused myths and the traces of their original traditions handed down to various peoples who we may demonize as savages because they don't fit our narrow creedal orthodoxy. I'm all for orthodoxy, and religions are exclusive for a reason, but truth is one, and if it is to be found in other religions, I need not call it lesser or false because it isn't mine. Truth belongs to no one, not even the gods. Truth, I will add to the end of his statement here, is God. So that's pretty cool. I love this essay. It's a really good job of describing the unity, the duality, the trinity, and the quaternity in spiritual terms. And I also liked this. This is not that great of a page in and of itself, but it did bring up the reminder that the alchemical process is also a quaternity. And this is the cycle, actually, but in this, it's less of a cycle and it's more of a transcendent process, right? And you have the blackening, the yellowing, the reddening, and the whitening. Is that how it goes? Yeah. You light it on fire, you burn away the bits, you let it sit for a while. The yellowing is like sitting for a while, so you can steep and stew in it. The reddening, God, do you heat it again? I think you do. I think you like sift out just the most essential parts and then you do the heating again, and then that crystallizes it. Yeah, that's it. Turns it into a crystallized form, which is white and pure. So you've just divined the essence of this thing. And that's when you're applying alchemy to, like plant matter and things. And I hope that I got that right in the right order too, because I may have switched a yellow and a red or something, but I know the beginning and the end. And It's also the process you go through in yourself. And it's also the process that everything goes through. So you could also talk about it as what we just described about God, right? God is like this oneness, and something divides from it. And let's say they went really, really far. That'd be like a blackening. Like everything fell apart for that little individuated piece of God, like you or me, who maybe went like really, really far to this place called Earth that was like a wild fucking trip. And now we're like, holy shit, like why are things so like this here, so far from God? So that could be like a blackening. And then the yellowing is we're like stewing here for a while and we're like, actually, like this place is pretty amazing. And look at all the God here and all these God things. Like this tree has God and that sky has God and I have God. And like God is actually still here. And then we go through some trials and tribulations, perhaps. Shit seems to get real, real hot, real hard. There's like maybe a great reset or something going on. And then we're like, man, that sucks. But actually, when we come out on the other side, we will both be what is most essentially us, with nothing else and no trappings left. And we will also know God, and we will have brought together the two opposites to create something entirely new, which is what we've been talking about this whole time. So that quaternity is an interesting addition to our unity, our duality, our trinity that we talked about, even if we go all the way back to that Vesica Pisces. And now we're here at the quaternity, which is perhaps the ultimate. And this is just an interesting thought from Jung that we'll just look at. He says, triads of gods appear very early at the primitive level. The archaic triads in the religions of antiquity and of the East are too numerous to be mentioned here. Arrangement in triads is an archetype in the history of religion, which in all probability formed on the basis of the Christian Trinity. He was wrong about that. I don't know why he would say that. The ones in the East are much older, provably so. But anyways, there are trinities everywhere. Maybe he's right, actually. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I think the other ones are older. But anyways, he goes on then to say also, it makes an enormous practical difference whether your dominant idea of totality is 3 or 4. That's fascinating. Like, I would need to read all the context of that. What made him say that? So if you think there's a trinity version of God or a quaternity version of God, and that which one of them is dominant for you is what makes all the difference. I would then have to use alchemy as my guide and the Kybalion as my guide to say that the quaternity would be the superior one, not because it's a higher number, but because of this process we just described might be essential. And the Trinity might keep you like ever reeling, looking for the missing part. And one of the reasons why quaternity is resisted, this person goes on to say in this especially short little essay, is because the fourth piece in the Trinity to many would be evil or Satan or the devil, which might perhaps be the blackening part, might be the reddening, I don't know. But a lot of people are like, no, evil's not part of God. But I think if you're really honest with yourself, you have to say, yeah, it is. Oh, I see. It's not that short. You just have a full article here. Oh, but that page doesn't exist. So yes, quaternity could very well involve evil. If you're going to unite the two opposites of something, wouldn't it be good and evil? Perhaps. Very scary idea for many people to even consider. I'm not in any way saying that you should go unite with some evil. Like, by no means am I saying that. I am saying perhaps on a grand scale, there is something like that happening where whatever thought it was evil because it was so far from God is going to come back into connection with light, and that the balancing of that will bring balance to many things. Who knows? Because dragons came up and because this is so fascinating to me that I never saw it before. And I always wonder if dragons were really real or if they're just a symbol or archetype or what. They're very clearly real on the spiritual level. They come into many people's guidance sessions and healing ceremonies for them. And it's always super fun. They all look very different too, which is interesting. But I'd never heard of this. There's this, this is on a site called Archeo News, and the Arc is with a K, Archeo News. Unsolvable megalithic mystery of ancient Greek dragon houses. Dragon houses. They're called dragon houses in the local culture. And there's 23 of them, and they're way on the top of this mountain. Again, we have mountains, and again, we have gods on mountains, and again, we have these interdimensional, perhaps, types of beings or creatures associated with mountains. I get that mountains like reaches the sky, and so we have this symbol of the mountain that this could be where angels come down, or this is where you reach to God, and all of that makes sense. It's a logical reason why we have that symbol, but it is more than that. I mean, we have caught so many orbs and things, and again, like the Bigfoot stuff, and if I'm on a mountain, those wogies are way heavier. In the traditions that I got the term wogie from way after I started interacting with them, but I finally had a word for them. In that tradition, they're also associated with mountains, so these beings seem associated with mountains. It could just be the portal aspect of it, who knows. But again, it's on Okai Mountain, if I'm saying that right. This is in Greece, high up on a mountain, and they didn't know they were there. They're megalithic houses. They're mortar-free. He says they resemble this stepped pyramid, but you tell me. I mean, it looks like a big, long, rectangular house. Look how there's a slit down the center, too. Very interesting. If there'd be soot all over here, you would know that was for, like, smoke to go out, which a lot of different constructions would have back in the day. It's very interesting. Very interesting structure. How? Like, can you look at this and tell me how someone made that? These are huge slabs, and they're just, like, piled together. They're not super neat. Like, who piled those there like that? Like, I just don't understand how you could even do this. There's no foundations. Their roofs are skillfully built with enormous plates stacked on top of one another in pyramidal pattern. Again, it's not... I guess it's pyramidal because they're stacked stones, but they're rectangles, so... And it's 4,547 feet up from ocean level. Of course, Greece is an island surrounded by ocean, so you would be, have to go from that level up. Not much is known about them. It's a much higher number than people expected when they found them. The sheer size and weight of a single megalith sitting on two similarly sizable post stones, which together create a gateway, consistently astounds academics. The mechanism by which this megalith was raised and set on the poles is as mysterious as the rationale behind their construction. And you can see here it's kind of like a pi symbol. They're like, just the size of this is like, what? Who did this? The weight and magnitude of the megaliths are astounding. Considering these dragon houses are situated at very high altitudes. In order to build the dwellings at this height, the builders had to figure out a technique to move such massive stones from a much lower elevation. Additionally, each building has a pantheon-like aperture in the roof that is probably there to let natural sunlight or moonlight illuminate the inside of the structures. That's actually a cooler reason than my smoke idea. But these are hella cool. Alex says, those who believe in electric universe interpret dragons as the Birkeland currents between planets. Dude, they're definitely interplanetary. I mean, they can go anywhere they want, as far as I see. Lindsay points out Golgotha, Calvary, is the mountain that Jesus died on. Oh, wow. I didn't realize he also died on a mountain. Travis in the chat says, I just met a neighbor's 3-year-old son. He pointed at a mountain in the distance and said, I don't know why the mountain is there. I replied, I think mountains are made for climbing. He said, yes, with so much enthusiasm. It felt source inspired. I love that. That's actually often my statement to people. If I don't know why, I will flat out say it. I'll be like, such and such a thing seems to be true. I don't know why. Because people need to know if I know why or not. I mean, why is the most important question we can ask. Alex says, dragon is also the 5th signs of the Earth astrology, only non-real animal, which is also interesting. That is interesting. It makes me wonder. So the first person to find these was in 1758. Oh, sorry, I don't know when he found them, but he lived 1758 to 1841. So sometime in there, they're not going to tell us when. Check out from the inside, like, how are these rocks just stacked like that? Like, what a cool construction. Why are there 23 of them? This is interesting too. As always, this is always true in every megalithic structure. According to researchers, a Sirius rise orientation dates it to around 1100 BC. There's always a Sirius connection. Are these dragons from Sirius? Do they come here through mountains? Do they just love mountains? Do they just need less oxygen? I don't know. These are questions to be asked. Based on other artifacts found there, that date is consistent as well, 1100 BC. Of course, they never take into account that someone could have come there, found it, left some artifacts there, and it still could be way earlier. But we know that. You and I know that. Okay, locals believe they were farmhouses, shelters, or military structures. According to an ancient local tradition, the word dragon did not only refer to the mythical beast, but to any person with superhuman power. This has led many to believe that the origin of the home stems back to the ancient Greek gods, which I am still willing to bet were actual beings, that they weren't actually gods, but they were just really, really high level, you know, practitioners of various traditions, maybe even. I mean, I don't know. Perhaps, like Gary Wayne says, they're Nephilim or whatnot. They're fallen, or they're demons. But that's pretty fascinating. There's one more thing that was super fascinating about this. All right, so they discovered many numerous pots inside these buildings, as well as an apothetes. I don't know what that is. A subterranean construction. Oh, it's a subterranean construction inside. So there's actually an underground to it too. Wow, like a basement, which had utensils, animal bones, and pottery fragments, and inscriptions dating from the pre-classical period to the Hellenistic period were discovered. This is my favorite part. They just end this on a fucking cliffhanger. They say, on one of the pot shards, I don't know why it's spelled so weird, on one of the pot shards were inscriptions in an unknown type of writing. Like, can you not give us a picture of that? Is that not the most fascinating part about the whole fucking thing? There's a dragon house in Greek. Sorry, there's 23 dragon houses in Greece that somehow we've never heard about, even though I've been pretty obsessed with megalithic and ancient structures for my entire life since I was a child, but I've never heard of these at all, and all of a sudden we have them, and you're just gonna leave me with one of the pot shards had an inscription in an unknown writing? Since when do we have unknown writing on Earth, except in that weird Voynich manuscript or whatever, which I don't know if that counts. But other than that, like, that seems like the biggest discovery of all here. And that the local people were like, yeah, I mean, dragons could be the creature. It could just be humans who are superhuman. Or another way of saying that would be like interdimensional humanoid types of things. Could be. Who knows? Pretty wild. So I loved this. Because dragons came up and because I came across that, I had to share it with you guys. That's it. There's nothing else. It's a place to end on. I want to know what the writing is. If you know, please tell me. If you can find out what the pot shard looked like, or what was on it, or how do we not know a language or any kind of writing? Maybe I'm totally ignorant. Maybe there's like a million writings we don't know anything about, and I've just never heard of that in my entire life. It's totally possible. Maybe that's what changed when I went through the portal. I jumped into a dimension where there's tons and tons of writing that we don't know anything about, we can't read or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm still moving forward on this, so I don't have conclusions. And you know, if you've known me long enough, you know that that's like pretty generally true of me. But what are the two things that you're drawing together, that we are drawing together, that I'm drawing together, that become one thing, which is a completely new universe? There's so many ways that it could be true. There's so many things it could be describing. We could go from alchemy, inner alchemy, to external alchemy. We could talk about the whole world's energy fields and sources, right? We could be just talking about good and evil in general. We could be talking about networks of energies of good and evil. There was a show I did a long time ago about dragon lines, and this very creepy sight that came about also in a very synchronistic way, in a very negative synchronistic way. It was actually a demonic encounter via sort of another person. It wasn't like coming through them, but they were delivering the message because they were attached to that energy somewhat. And they shared this, and it was this like coven. It was a worldwide dark coven. I know it sounds like something you can dismiss, but it was very clearly actually organized, and they had over thousands of years been pulling off one by one their own version of their own sort of great work, I'll just call it, in which their order had acquired specific land around the world that was places of we might call chakras, right? Energetic importance, where dragon lines or ley lines were converging, almost always at a mountain. And they were doing dark rituals there to try and like turn that energy negative. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like that's not even like the Illuminati or whatever we're trying to pretend that we like fucking know about, or that's not even like the Rockefellers and what I mean. It also could entail those people, but those aren't the things that we're like actually talking about. When we talk about all those types of conspiracies, we're looking at like new world orders and economic system upheavals and disruptions and all this type of stuff. These people are talking about like the spiritual takeover of the Earth's energy system and the turning of that into utter evil and darkness. I'm not gonna lie, it was actually one of the few things in the world that scares me. It scared me. I was like, that, and it scared me because I could tell very much how real it was, and that it wasn't just someone making like a weird site to scare people. Now you all are like, show us the site. I would have to dig through so many bookmarks to find it, but I do have it somewhere, and maybe I'll try to find it for you all. Maybe that's what I'll do during the hangout, and you can look at it too and tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm crazy for thinking that those are actually real people who are actually serious about their mission. And I'm not saying I believe they can pull that off. I'm not saying that's what's scary about it. I'm saying it's scary that that exists, and that I think those people are, and that it's not just like a, hey, we're in a coven. Like it's like a dark ass order of dark magician witches and otherwise warlocks and whatnot, who think that they're going to completely subvert the Earth's energy. Hey, maybe that's how you bring two into one. What do I know? No, I'm not in alignment with that, and I don't support it, and it worries me that there's humans who do or would. Like, what do you have to do? Like, what happened? Who touched your butthole to make you do that? Like, something not right with you. So I guess, like, let's send love to those people and hope that they can do better. And again, maybe like a squirrel will run in right when they think they're about to do like the most important incantation. He'll knock over like the, thing holding like the blood or whatever. And then like fire will burn them all and they'll die. Like that's the type of shit. That's the type of shit that article we were just reading is talking about, where it just could be accidental. Like it just cannot help but happen that way. Whether we have to plan it, carry it out to succeed in the end in order to really overcome and triumph and bring this unity or this transcendence or quaternity or trinity or whatever it is you're going to go with out of these options, or whether it is something so random that no one saw it coming and it will never even be known what happened, just that things didn't go that way. That's the shit. I love you all. I'm so excited that we get to have such good shows coming up. We have a hangout coming up if you're around and into it. Wow, I went a long time. I can just talk and talk sometimes, can't I? I hope to see you guys at the hangout for at least a little bit. And otherwise, I will see you next time. So until you have mastered your own internal alchemy, have brought your own duality into a unity, and birthed your own universe, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Yeah, come on, Rat Kings, baby. It's the rap machine. Yeah, check it. Great, my motherfucker unknown. Yeah, come on. In the place with my business.
sister, meaning I resist the bullshit that they feed us and lead us. This is just a part of the process, man, just watch this, cause this shit's about to get crazy like a mosh pit. We lost it, toss it, let's start it again, cause now with technology, with smarter men and women, this is the beginning, not the end. If this is the message of hope that I send, look on your TV, it's a culture of death. They'll keep on lying to the very last breath. We keep on striving and spreading the truth. It's hard to survive in this world for the youth. The door is closed, the old world is dead. Let's have an age of understanding instead. I'll include you and you include me. Let's see what we can build with some positivity. Let's go, you're moving too slow. Let me see your hands if you know what I know. Come on.
Rap like mummy, ain't no dummy in my rhyming. Started flowing freestyle and now they rhyming loud silence. On with the violence, bodies piling with the gray-bearded pirate. On your TV in 4K 3D virtual reality. Casualty of urban warfare. I know but I'm not scared, just prepared and aware. Shining my light through the tunnel of hope. Into the rope, but I'ma give it one more pull. Till the family is full. Take the bull by the horns and lead it to the slaughter. That would be harder and you would be softer. Sometimes I'm a monster and you forever imposter, which is champagne and lobster. This royalty, the way it was supposed to be. Hopefully the new door opens and the old one closes with way more focus and growth to mold us, and the truth that they should have told us.
To them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that a flicker rate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet. Everyone got a gift, everyone got a light. They want you to forget that ish, cause they can't dim the bright. The positive vibration takes you past the sign shackles, from the sewers and the alleys into moving castles. Who these assholes really serving with an exposed Achilles surgeon around the corner lurking to prove ascension trumps perversion? Learn them to catch fish and unplug the signal. Show them the simpletons now build the fucking temples.